we deserve a more complete briefing on what happens now, what the success or failure of that is, and what other options we might have.
Ms. Padera.
Just if it helps for clarification, I think we were leaning towards recommending a no vote on this, but we just hadn't finished collaborating with some of our kindergarten people to just make sure that we weren't missing something. So I think we're kind of leaning in that direction anyway, because, you know, I think we've had better success, but we have heard some ramifications and some information about this assessment program. So, but I would be fine with taking it up at finance if the three of us are here, and then we'll have a little more information to confirm that. But that's the way I think we were leaning anyways after our first discussion on this assessment.
Is it likely or possible that we'll have more information by Monday morning? And then if the answer to that is no, is there another finance meeting before November 3rd? I don't know the answer to that.
There is another
Yes.
one
November
Monday.
2nd.
There is.
November 2nd.
Okay. So certainly, if not by Monday, by November 2nd, there should be additional information. So I'll move to delegate to the Finance Subcommittee a vote on Resolution 7 of the MASCA resolutions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right. Thank you, Ms. Padera. Next on the agenda, school committee goals. At the last meeting, I sought to assign responsibility to some of the members who had indicated interest in certain of the goals, and so we did that. We assigned responsibility to some. There was a desire expressed to have some more discussion on this, and so so the floor is open. I will note that Mr. Walker has indicated an interest in being the responsible person for the strategy to the fourth goal for 2015-16, which is develop a strategy to address the special education proficiency gap by June 2016. But with that, the floor is open. Ms. Bagley-Jones.
I think my question to you had been more around a process issue when we've done subcommittees, you know, can we have some discussion?
Right.
But then my other question is, when it says responsible committee person, it would be helpful, I think, to have an understanding of what that is. What does it mean to be responsible for this goal? Does it mean, what does it mean? You know, what's your timeline?
Yeah.
You know, if it's a goal, how is it a SMART goal? You know, specifically, what is Mr. Walker going to do to develop the strategy around special education, for example, or by when? I mean, how are we going to oversee these to make them happen?
Well, so the idea is some member or some committee is going to be responsible and accountable for accomplishing that goal. And to the extent that that individual or committee needs to bring in other resources or other members to try to make sure that goal is accomplished, that member or committee can do so. So it's really assigning responsibility and accountability so it doesn't get lost. So because as a group, as a group, I don't think we follow these things week to week. But my idea is that it's nice to have, you know, as I mentioned last meeting, it's nice to have some accountable person or committee that would be responsible for following this thing through to make sure it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea. It's not a mandate to say this is how you're going to do it. It's a mandate to say here's our goal.
Mm-hmm.
We all talked about it. We all discussed it. Now let's, you know, you be responsible for making sure it happens.
Mhm.
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I just add to that?
Yeah, please.
Oh, and I totally get that. So the action words are, you know, develop a plan, review and investigate.
Mhm.
So that's what the responsibility is. Like Sheila, you know, yours is around review, investigate new methods of effective communication. If it doesn't happen in terms of she investigates it, but it doesn't get off the ground, that's not her goal. That's not her responsibility. If she does what she's supposed to do in here,
Exactly.
That's it,
That's
okay.
exactly right. That's
and
exactly
then I
right.
guess I would look at, you know, reporting out or timelines around it, because I think you're absolutely right about following through on them. So it might be good to just say, okay, mid-year, there's a check-in about where we're at or something. Or I don't know if you meant every meeting we were going to check in?
No, I don't think so. I would, personally, obviously that's up to the others, but personally, I would go by the timelines that are in here and just say that person's responsible, and if they need to do a check-in, they can do a check-in. But, if we want to change that, I suppose we could. But I would say that, everyone here and every individual in the committee is responsible, and that they don't necessarily need for us to mandate that they have to do a check-in, but, obviously, that's just my view.
I don't mean to keep,
Yeah.
but if nobody else has their hand up, I guess I think it would be really helpful for the rest of the committee and for the person doing this to check in halfway through, because then that's your chance to weigh in on the issues, it's your chance to get questions answered. So if we wait until June 2016, the school year is over. So it would be good to have some kind of accountability in communication around it midway through, whatever the deadline is.
Right, okay.
I'll second that. I mean, I think it would be good to be able to report publicly mid-year on these four main goals, and/or the continuing ones, if they're continuing from 24, 2015. I mean, if some of them end by, a lot of them end year end of this year, but at least for the 2015/2016 ones, I agree, and I think the town as a whole tunes out by June of 2016. So it might be, maybe starting after the new year, if each of the four goals at various meetings might have just an update, or a brief update, like we do in subcommittee, of where we're at and what's going on.
I don't think we need to formally do that. I mean, we can put it on the agenda. We can put it on the agenda in January and February. I don't know that we need to formally say, well, you need to check in by this date, but, that's just my view.
I think if people have updates, they should give updates, but I don't think putting in charge of people in goals is saying, okay, you better have this done by this. Like, the accountability thing, I think, is just a matter of you have interest in this, and would you be, willing to take responsibility for this goal and do that? And if you have updates to give, I think at any point you can give updates, but it shouldn't be a thing where we kind of force that issue, especially with our meetings. There's going to be a lot being taken up in our meetings in the next couple of months. So I would say that if people have updates, they should give updates. And if people are interested in, what those updates are, they can certainly request that that you get an update, or just wondering what's going on. But I don't think, I would agree with Mr. Zulus. I don't know if it needs to be formal, like at this date, we're going to get an update from every person or every subcommittee. I think it should be more informal, is the way I would think.
Ms. Bagley Jones.
You had your hand up.
Mr. Walker.
Let me try to describe what I think we're signing up for here. Under our policies, the chair is responsible for coordinating the evaluation of the superintendent, and by default, the chair has been responsible for ensuring that the goals that are set by the school committee that are to be executed by the superintendent are successfully on track and hopefully accomplished. So that's normally been a job that the chair has taken on. So I think it's a good idea to disperse that and to say, so for these specific objectives, we'll have different committee members or subcommittees, school committee subcommittees that are responsible for overseeing the progress on the goal. We should be clear here that with the possible exception of a space plan, these are goals that the superintendent will have to develop a timeline, action plan, and will be responsible for achieving. So I don't agree that in that case, school committee members should be reporting out. The superintendent should be reporting out on progress against goals. We could decide how often we want that to happen. It could be quarterly, it could be semi-annually. We could wait until the end of the year. But what I think the chair has proposed, that's a good idea, is that someone should be tracking progress week to week. I mean, these are goals for these, and the other thing, and we talked about this a couple of times, so I'm not going to harp on this point, but the superintendent's evaluation cycle is now a 2-year cycle. We're in the middle, so we're about to do a mid-cycle review. But we've now changed the equation a bit, and we voted to do that, but we've added four more goals to the superintendent's plate, or arguably 3 more goals in the middle of the cycle. So I think it's a good thing that we're actually going to disperse responsibility for overseeing progress on the goal, but I think that's what it is. We're not, the school committee point person, except for the facilities subcommittee, is not responsible for the achievement of the goal. They're simply there to work with the superintendent however they can to make sure that progress is proceeding with all due speed.
Okay, anything further? Set? Okay. On to the fourth item, the budget process.
Let the lights go down a little bit here. A couple meetings ago, Ms. Bagley-Jones asked for a Finance 101.
Sorry.
I promised to keep it short. It's only 7 slides. Just to give an idea, and as we enter the budget season, it's certainly not a bad thing to just talk a little bit about the overall structure of our budget and what we go through at this time of year, and just generally how the budget works. DESI requires all public schools to have a uniform standard for budgets. We have 7 major categories: policy and administration, instructional leadership, instruction, instructional services, special education, technology, and facilities that we work through. And these are broken up into 50 as being kind, it's more than 50 minor categories. And then into monitor, we actually divide that into over 1,000 individual line items. Because when we do our end-of-year report to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, they want to know not how many textbooks did you buy, but how many textbooks did each school buy? How many textbooks were bought for common purposes of all the schools? How many, and everything is broken down by school, everything is broken down by regular and special education, everything is, even facilities, you know. How much toilet paper was bought for each school. I mean, it is an amazing disaggregation of data. A couple features: that the school department budget, unlike any of the others in the town, is a bottom line budget. This is a result of the Education Reform Act. Town meeting votes only the total appropriation to the town. The school committee, by policy, votes basically 14 line items, the salary and non-salary line items for each of the 7 major categories. And the administration then divides those allocations among all the different line items underneath it, and we actually track it at the much more detailed level. Just a quick picture of what the trends have been over the last 5 years. The top line is regular education instruction. The second line in blue is special education instruction. And the lines that are flat at the bottom are pretty much everything else: administration, instructional services, technology, facilities. The takeaway from that is the budget has gone up over the years, but it goes up in the instructional category, regular education and special education. You can, the one little tweak in the lines you can see in the, from 15 to 16, whereas the regular education line flattened out a little bit and the special education line kicked up a little bit. That reflects a slight shift in the number of teachers, a couple more into the special education category than into the regular education category. So it's not a surprising trend. We don't, our money goes to instruction. In terms of the budget development, principals and coordinators identify priorities. The superintendent, the assistant superintendents, and principals developed a draft budget proposal. It goes to the school committee finance subcommittee, which analyzes it and makes their recommendations to the full committee. School committee will, in beginning of December, vote an initial request to the warrant committee for a budget. We'll hold our legally mandated public hearing. The warrant committee will be aggregating all the different town budgets and putting together their proposal for town meeting. The school committee has traditionally presented their request at town meeting. And finally, town meeting votes a final bottom line amount. As we've talked about a little this year, if part of that budget is contingent on the passage of a Proposition 2.5 override, a referendum needs to be held, which could legally be done either before or after town meeting. It has to be done within 45 days at the end of town meeting, but it can be done beforehand. So it could be done, for instance, on the April ballot if they wanted to do that. That's the general fund. We also have other funds. We have revolving funds. Anything basically where there is a fee involved. Summer school, adult ed, facilities rental, community schools. The $8 we collect for a lost textbook is a revolving fund to purchase more textbooks. Pupil transportation, where the bus fees go to help fund the bus budget. Athletics, the athletic revolving fund is where the athletic fees go. Athletic team fundraising is a separate revolving fund broken down by different teams where each of their fundraising is held separately. Pierce has a sports fund, full-day kindergarten for the tuition, integrated preschool for their tuition, circuit breaker, which comes from the state, and roughly 25 other revolving funds. We have many for different purposes. We have grant funds. IDEA is the special education federal grant, Title I. Limited English proficiency grant, teacher quality is a professional development grant. Special education program improvement is another grant, our full-day kindergarten grant, MCAS, other grants. So in any given year, we have a varying number of grants, although there's 6 or 7 standard federal grants that we will have from year to year. And one that we'll be dealing with, and I'm just as a heads up, we'll be dealing with this year, is the Student Activity Agency account. This is when clubs do their own fundraising. This is an account unlike any other accounts. This is actually a checkbook held in the hands of the principal legally, where students who raise funds for clubs deposit their money. Unlike the others, all the other ones are town money. Student activity funds from the Student Activity Agency account are actually the property of the clubs that raise them. They are not town funds. And they are,
Can you give us an example?
If the debate team raises money to go to an event out of state and they do a car wash or they do some fundraising, it goes into the Student Activity Agency account. It is not town funds, it is private money. It is subject to different regulations than public money. Bid laws don't apply, various different things don't apply. They have more freedom with what they can do with it, but there are different kinds of oversight. I bring this up because The oversight rules have just changed, and we are going to be talking about this in upcoming meetings. We are going to have to drastically rewrite our student activity policy, student activity fund policy, because there is now going to be a required annual audit, and it can be internal, but at least every 3 years is going to be an outside audit of the student activity funds. They are actually starting them this year, and I have the audit guidelines, and they check about 150 different things. And they're going to audit it for last year, when none of us knew what the requirements were. So needless to say, none of these audits are turning out very good, because they're finding many findings, because they're auditing, they're giving you a baseline for going forward. They're saying, what you did last year, these are the things that don't conform to what our new policies are. So these are the things you're going to have to change. So it's a bizarre kind of an audit. It's not a financial audit. They don't, it's a completely procedural audit. So we will be talking about this quite a bit this year, actually, because it's a mandate that we're going to have to deal with. I was just at a 3-hour course on it the other day. But that's a very different kind of account. Tonight, you would have seen the quarterly report, but you're going to see it at the next school committee. But this is basically how the school committee can track the budget. I give you a summary of the 7 major categories. I give you a summary of the 50 or so minor categories in the general fund. You get another sheet with colored columns on it that has not only that, but showing how the other funds from revolving funds and so forth come into play, both budgeted and expenditure. And then separate sheets on the revolving funds, the grant funds, and another special. Food service is a different kind of a revolving fund, authorized under different legislation. School committee revolving funds are different from town revolving funds. For those people who like to watch town meeting, at town meeting, of course, you have to annually reauthorize revolving funds and set spending limits. That's because they're set under a different chapter of the Mass General Laws. School committee revolving funds under Chapter 71, and under the food service, which is a different chapter, and under a few others. The facilities rentals, also a Chapter 44 revolving fund, do not require annual authorization and do not have spending limits on them in the same way that town revolving funds do. But this is quarterly what you'll be getting from me in terms of breakdown of where we are to date. On the continuing spending authorization, spending is done through 2 methods, of payroll warrant and vendor warrants, for obviously the salary and non-salary portions of the budget. Payroll warrants, those are just week-to-week payrolls, soon to be bi-week to bi-week payrolls. And the school committee designates 1 member to go to town hall weekly and sign the payroll warrant. Vendor warrants are what we're more familiar with at these meetings. The business office prepares the warrant. We email out a summary of all the payments. That's the cover sheet, generally on Fridays before a meeting. So you can see what's being spent on what, at least in brief, the vendor who's being paid, and a short description of for what and how much and from what account. The backup, of course, is this, these lovely folders of all the actual bills that is available for the school committee review. And then for each warrant, at least 4 members have to sign the front, indicating that the purchasers are approved and the funds are available. And then it goes to the town accountant, who also validates it, and then finally to the town treasurer for payment.
Dr. Pavlicek, if I could just interject.
Sure.
That second to last bullet, the indicating that purchases are approved and funds are available, the suggestion that members are now indicating that funds are available is relatively new. We got a legal opinion from town council, I think it was 2 years ago, that said that not only are we approving the purchases and suggesting that these seem to be reasonable and connected to the right vendors and expenses, but also that we're confirming that funds are available in that line item. So that was a big change, and one that gave us some pause.
I think there's also a question of whether it's available in the line item or in the aggregate. I mean,
Right.
That's, I don't think we got a solid word on that, but the town council did give an opinion that it was a statement that funds are available. And so that is the nutshell, that's the 4-minute version of budget and spending. And it sort of sets the stage for the quarterly reports that you have the first quarter report in your hand. Finance will be looking at it initially, and then I expect it'll be on the next school committee agenda for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Pavlicek. Dr. Donahue.
Question by way of point of clarification. Can you just confirm for me the order of events in terms of our Chapter 70 money? My understanding is I believe that the state does the count on October 1st, and then our Chapter 70 funds are then made available essentially the following July, when the state budget is worked out. Is that correct?
Right, the October 1st counts are used to, basically apportion the pool.
Right.
That then won't be set until the budget is approved at some point in the spring or early summer. And the apportionment is done in consideration of the October 1st report.
And if I may, I bring that up now as it relates to our extensive previous conversations about full-day K and the funding for that, how essentially the state, we're getting paid a year in arrears, our state Chapter 70 money, which creates forward problems when we look to change revenue streams as it relates to full-day K. So I'm sure we'll be talking about more of that later, but just for everyone watching.
Ms. Varela.
So I have three quick questions. So on the other funds page, well, even before I go to that, I just want to, Dr. Donahue reminded me to ask, with regard to Chapter 70, I'm just wondering, does that change yearly statewide about what constitutes a family that would fall into the Chapter 70? Does, like, the income level change yearly of them assessing what that is? I was just wondering that.
There are two parts to Chapter 70. The foundation budget takes into account only the students who are in your classrooms, and whether they're regular ed or special ed or this or that, and it's an estimation of what it should cost to run your district given the makeup of it. The second part of it is the town's, an estimation of the town's ability to pay, the expected local contribution. And that is based on things like the property values in the town, the median income of the town, and so forth. Those don't change annually. They tend to use census data on that, or data that's more sporadic, but the valuation of the town, there could be a partial reevaluation of the town, so some of that changes annually, but it's not an annual recomputation of the whole town or of that part of it. And then Chapter 70 is just the difference between those two numbers.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. Okay, and then my other two questions are, with regards to the revolving fund accounts, so it looks to me as though all of the revolving fund accounts are extra income that you all get, or we all get from communities who rent out the facilities, and then if you want to do the integrated preschool, you have to pay money, and the full-day K, you have to pay money, and if you lose a textbook, you have to pay money. You want to go to summer school, you have to pay money. So what I'm wondering is, so does each thing have its own account? Like, does summer school have its own account? Does adult ed have its own account? Is there one massive revolving funds account?
They're individual accounts.
So they're all individual?
They're what are called special revenue funds in the town, but they're all individual accounts. The town has several hundred accounts.
Right. So in that instance, there can't be any money, like, taken out of summer school to help pay for integrated preschool or full-day K, or anything like that. Right. You only can pay for the money can only go to pay for that, athletic team fundraising stuff, okay? I just, because I'm new, I just was wondering, I didn't know, so, I didn't know if it was one big giant revolving fund that you put it all into and, okay, so that's good to know. And then my other question is, I was wondering how athletic team fundraising is different than student activity fundraising.
That too.
It's tricky. Athletic team fundraising looks very much like student activity fees and the student activity account, and in fact, can be done either way. So you can do athletic team fundraising as part of the student activity agency fund, or you can do it as a revolving fund. In fact, the existence of a student activity agency fund isn't mandated. You could do everything that fund does through a revolving fund. It's just when you do that, it's town money.
When you do which?
When you do it through a revolving fund, it is town money.
Got it.
So you have to follow bid laws and so forth and so on. When you do athletic fundraising or any fundraising that is done by the students,
Yeah,
not by the PTOs for the students
Yeah.
or by some other organization, but literally by the students for a club that's approved by the superintendent, and actually what you'll find is now approved by the school committee, is going to be a new part of the policy, then that money actually belongs to the club. And the Student Activity Agency Fund is a private fund. So there is a choice on the school committee level as to which way to do things.
So-
And that's something we have to, that the school committee is going to have to make a decision on.
so this is what I don't understand. So if the girls' volleyball team decides to do a fundraiser, okay, and it's in a revolving fund account, you say that it's a town account, where as opposed to if the girls' volleyball team decides to do the fundraiser under the student activity account, that's their money and nobody can do it. But then you say, what I don't understand is that with the revolving funds account, if it's the girls' volleyball team, then nobody else can take it. Like, you're saying that it's town money, so explain the
But,
difference.
Here's the difference. The girls' volleyball has a giant fundraiser,
Right?
and it's to buy new uniforms. Well, that could happen either in the activity fund, activity club, or as a revolving fund. If the girls' volleyball team were to do a fundraiser and they wanted to do it for charity and give money to the American Heart Association or the American Cancer Society or something,
Okay.
you cannot do that through a revolving fund.
Got it.
The town cannot make a charitable donation
Okay.
from town money. So they would have to do it through a student activity fund where it's their money, and they, as private funds, they can make a donation
Right.
to a charitable foundation. And they can use that money for a variety of different purposes. And that's the reason why, under new policies, the school committee is going to have to approve of not only the student activity agency fund, but each individual club that has an account in it, what they're going to use it for, and how they're going to raise the money annually.
Mr.
This is
Chair.
going to be quite a change from a school committee perspective. It's not going to be a huge change from a physical perspective within the schools. The people who run the accounts will run it basically the same way, but there will be a new level of oversight at the school committee level that has never really been there before.
Mr. Walker?
Could I suggest that we try to commit a more precise answer to this question to writing? I think it's an important question, and I'm not sure that everyone's clear on exactly what the differences are between the agency account and the,
I have a 40-page document for the Finance Committee that you're going to get on Monday.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be follow-up on the student
Yeah.
activity agency count, so we'll do that way. Ms. Bagley-Jones?
Sheila asked one of my questions, and I just want to be clear, first of all, this was a great job, thank you. It's really helpful, and it's going to go on the web, I assume, and in the superintendent's email blast. I think that would be really good, it's timely. So the athletic fees are the gate receipts and the sports fees versus the athletic fundraising?
Correct.
Okay. And then the athletic budget is based on an estimate of what we think we'll get for the fees to pay sport, and the gate receipts, and something else, I forget. what.
Fundraising.
Fundraising, right, done by adults. Well, anyway, so that's the athletic versus the athletic team fundraising, so I just wanted to be
Yep.
clear. And then the third one is the boosters, which is not part of us, and people mix those three things up all the time.
Yeah, they do.
The boosters are a separate 501c3 nonprofit, as the PTOs are. They have nothing to do with us in the sense of financial. We have no financial oversight over them. They are their own entity with respect to IRS rules. They have their own filings that they do and their own requirements that are completely separate from us.
Can I keep going?
Yeah, please.
Can I suggest that there be a little footnote somewhere that says that about the PTOs and the boosters, because people, so does that include FAME as well?
It does?
Okay, so because people mix those up, and I think there are questions asked about that, so I think that would be really helpful. And then my other question was, when you say the 25 other revolving funds, as we go forward, if we can just keep a list of the other 25.
Oh, they get them in the quarterly
Right, no,
report.
I mean, like, when you're doing this kind of a presentation, like when this goes on the web, people, well, this is missing, so it just helps keep.
We can put a link to the last quarterly report, and they can see them all.
You could, as long as you just say, a list of all revolving funds are listed on whatever. And then Mr. Walker's point about, on the last page, indicating that the purchases are approved and that funds are available. I guess I have wondered about some people's concerns about signing the warrant, and now I'm looking at this going, yeah, I'm signing that and saying the funds are there for that thing. So I guess I would like to, even though I have the utmost respect and faith in Glenn, I would like to sort of have some discussion at a later point about how, when we sign and we're saying we know the funds are available for that, it's a little bit concerning.
Well, that led to a change in the cover page that now gives us that information from Glenn. So we do get that information in the cover page to the warrants. And that was that was really what led to the change. And yeah, so there was so we now have that
Okay.
information.
You haven't gotten on the last couple warrants because it's the beginning of the year, and
Oh, okay.
No, it has not been on. We just.
I was going to say, wow, I missed that
No, the
completely.
fundraiser system just got the budget loaded a couple
Okay,
weeks
I
ago,
feel
so I
better
have
now.
not been able to generate
Okay.
those reports until
All
now.
right, thank you. So the discussion's already happened, and action's already been taken, and I just haven't seen it yet. So, perfect. Thank you. That was great.
Ms. Padera.
I would just like to, I know we were going to add this, we talked about it at finance this week, but that when I came on as a new school committee member, I made an appointment with the superintendent for business to sit down and go through the warrant and how to go through it and what it meant, and you know, how to check like the numbers, and if you had a question, what to do. And I thought that was very helpful and I think Mr. Pavlicek readily recommended that people do that with him if they have questions, and that he could sit down with any member that either is new or needs refreshing, especially with the new rule there. But that would be a way to get a little more information on your time to get a refresher course on warrant signing and checking.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pavlicek. On to the Finance Subcommittee report.
The first item is fiscal 16 budget reductions, and Finance Committee thought it would be a good idea to just confirm the status of the reductions that were made. And you have a document here called Cut List Restoration Priorities. So let me just talk about what the vote actually will be and what information we have here. So the information we have here is that the items below the line, I understand from the administration, are the cuts that were actually implemented to balance the fiscal 16 budget. Now, you'll note that there is one item in red, high school world language, 1.0 FTE, which has a strike through, and then 4/10 math, 4/10 English, and 2/10 PE to total 1.0 FTE. The reason that's in red is because we're asking you to retroactively approve the 4/10 math, 4/10 English, 2/10 PE reduction, and to vote that this evening. So I will move that we approve that cut. I did politely remind the superintendent that since we go through a rigorous process, which she leads, where we talk about not only the priorities, but the cuts necessary to balance the budget, we brief the PTOs, and then, as you'll note at the bottom of the page, in March, we vote the final cuts, that if subsequent to that, the administration has a better idea or a different idea than what the school committee voted, that they need to come back to the school committee and ask for approval prior to implementation of the cut, not subsequent to the implementation of the cut. But, as is usually the case, I think superintendent usually has good ideas, and we usually think they're good ideas. So this was one where there was quite a bit of discussion about the high school world language cut. It had some AP implications which were not pleasant. So without the benefit of a lengthy discussion, this appears to be a better idea. But in any case, this is the cut that was implemented. So we're asking you to retroactively approve it. What this is not, therefore, is a listing of what the restoration priorities are, and this will be important as we talk about next year's budget and which of these, if any, we might wish to restore. So just because it's at the top of the list does not mean it is the number one restoration priority. Quite the contrary, we haven't discussed it at all.
Second?
Thank you. That was a motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Varela. Dr. Donahue.
You were first, huh?
A brief comment. I appreciate the clarity that this amended list provides, and I would like to point out that I think it is probably more disruptive to individual teachers as constructed here, but I think as a whole, the effect on our programs is less, and I think that this is a good exchange from that perspective, and my acknowledgement to those members on the teaching staff who are negatively affected by that change.
Ms. Varela.
So I'm not totally clear. So the high school world language and the high school .4 math, .4 English, and .2 PE, is that for this year to automatically, or for next year?
This year, fiscal 16.
Okay, so we have the money to figure out how to replace the .4, the .4, and the point.
No.
All right,
So,
and that-
They were cut.
so here's the sequence of events.
They were cut for the beginning of this year.
Didn't vote it.
I'm
Stay
confused.
with me. So
Yeah.
the sequence of events was, we decided that these cuts below the line, including the 1.0 world language,
Yeah.
were necessary to balance the budget.
Right, I'm following that.
Okay.
Right.
Then in June, I think,
Mm-hmm.
the administration decided that this cut was a better cut, implemented that cut, so that
Which cut?
Point four, point four,
point
point
four,
two.
point four,
Oh, okay,
point two.
okay,
Right.
okay.
So that on July 1, or soon thereafter,
language
the
teacher?
budget, no.
Yes.
we kept the world language teacher, and as Dr. Donahue has pointed out, took various
Get of that
amounts
.4, the
from,
.4, and the .2.
each of 3 FTEs.
Okay, all right, that, I explain it. Okay, thank you.
Good, that's good.
Dr. Pavlicek.
One of the things that precipitated this was, at the end of the year, our high school mathematics department head took a job in another community. Our middle school mathematics department head moved out of state, and we had the opportunity to combine the two jobs into a single job, which gave us some savings. And so it's the equivalent, the .4 equivalent was basically an administrative restructuring that allowed us to get that part of it, and then we went from there into the other disciplines where we had, for instance, a PE teacher return from leave, and it gave us some more flexibility in the PE, and we managed to cobble together a 1.0 in a different manner. And basically, it was precipitated by changes in staff that happened very late in the year.
Okay.
Anything further? Ms. Downs?
The motion is to retroactively approve the high school cuts of 4/10 of a math teacher, 4/10 of an English teacher, and 2/10 of a PE teacher. Seconded by Ms. Padera.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Can I just make one more comment, though, for the record?
Sure.
I just want to say that with that done, yet again, for the cuts, the middle school was the most decimated last year, when you look at the elementaries, the high schools, and the structure changes that were made. Just for the record, just throwing it out there.
November 4th,
Yep,
full discussion.
yep.
Your
Okay.
opportunity.
I'll be there.
Okay. Vendor warrant, Dr. Pavlicek, number and date and amount.
Number 17, dated tomorrow, October 22nd, and the amount is $953,430.47.
Move approval of vendor warrant number 17 dated 10/22/15 in the amount of $953,430.47.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 501, Mr. Walker abstaining. Policy Subcommittee report.
So at our last subcommittee meeting, we took up several policies, one of which was the diversity policy, policy IFC. We discussed the policy in subcommittee, and after going through the policy and discussing potential changes and our process for evaluating the policy itself, which if I may for just a moment, our process for evaluating changes to our policies, we are informed by several different sources, one of which is legal counsel, one of which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, I believe it is, and then one of the other sources is a collaborative that has a number of different districts' policies where we can access them, and compare them to our own. And in going through that process, we were unable to find a similar diversity policy at any of the other districts in that collaborative. We think that we are the only district in that collaborative that has a diversity policy. So with those avenues of exploration explored, the subcommittee decided that the diversity policy as it stands, as it is before you, was sufficient, did not require amending. So we submitted to you tonight for reapproval. If anybody has constructive comments or changes they would like to see, we're certainly open to incorporating those and implementing those at our next subcommittee meeting. But if not, then I would move reapproval of our diversity policy, policy IFC.
So I'll second for the purposes of discussion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
So, Dr. Donahue, this is unchanged, or?
Correct. This is unchanged.
Kevin, if I may, I'm trying to remember, did we do a first read of this at the last meeting?
No, we did not do a first read of this at the last meeting, and as a point of order, I'll ask you to clarify for reapproval of unchanged policies. I don't know if it requires a first and second reading. my exposure to previous policies that have been reapproved do not indicate such, but I will gladly defer to the chair.
Yeah, I'd have to check,
Yeah.
and I don't want to take everybody's time to check it now. So my suggestion is that we just do a first read and then go ahead at the
That would
next
be-
meeting. And you could be entirely right, I just don't have that at top of mind, so if there's no objection, we'll just treat this as a first read.
Not at all.
and treat the next meeting as a second read. Ms. Bailey-Jones?
We're still on this, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I know we talked about this a little bit, and we do have gender in here, but we don't have, we talked about transgendered issues, so
Mhm.
I don't know if we need to specify that. I mean, I think if it belongs anywhere, it belongs in our, I mean, that's not what I meant. It belongs in our diversity report. I didn't mean if it belongs anywhere. Slip the deck.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walker?
So that's one of the things I wanted to look at. I'm not sure, I think there's a distinction between a discrimination policy and a diversity policy, and I don't want to confuse the two, but so if this is a first reading, I think we'll all have time to think about those things and come back with thoughtful comments, hopefully.
And perhaps provide comments to the policy subcommittee before their next
Great.
meeting, so they can consider them. Dr. Donahue?
Please, and they are quite welcome. I would point out in reading through the policy references both Massachusetts laws and federal statutes. And although I'm not a lawyer, I believe there may be some divergence there with regard to gender identity, at least in terms of promulgated statutes, maybe not with regard to executive orders and such. So that may be something that we would look at incorporating, but it may add or it may not add a degree of complexity to the policy. As
Anything further? So I guess what we should do is get our comments, to the extent we have them before the next meeting, to Dr. Donahue for consideration by this policy subcommittee, and then we'll put it on the agenda for a second read on the 4th.
excellent.
Okay. Facility subcommittee report.
We've met twice, and the two major agenda items, other than the capital plan, which was reviewed by the facility subcommittee before we submitted it, have been space needs study, and a comprehensive facilities management plan. There were some good ideas or good suggestions regarding space actions that we should take preliminary to commissioning a full-blown space needs study, and that I passed on to the superintendent, which were that we should look at the possibility of possibly taking advantage of the Cunningham attic, which is currently unused but has considerable amount of space. There are some facilities issues there, but whether possibly that could be of some use. The other idea was to perhaps talk with Curry College and Milton Academy regarding some the potential of an in-kind donation of space, perhaps for use for the burgeoning preschool programs. So I asked the superintendent to think about those things. If we think they're viable ideas, obviously we'll come to the school committee with some recommendations. But the facilities subcommittee thought that at the very least we should look into those things before we commission a full space needs study. On the facilities management plan, we've been working hard on ensuring that we are all clear and have some consensus on what the content of a facilities management plan should be. We made some good progress last meeting. I promised them quarterly meetings, but we've been meeting monthly. We will meet again in November, and I think at that point we will have nailed down what we think the key components of a facilities management plan are. We may may be asking for the school committee's approval to engage outside resources, but I'll try to have some estimate of what that might cost nailed down so that we can include that in the discussion of next year's budget and perhaps one-time money requests. So I think we're making good progress. It's a good group, and more shortly.
Sorry,
Bagley Jones.
quick question. So do we have a sense of what the numbers are going forward with how overcrowded we're going to be? Or is it too preliminary?
That's the thing, that other than this preschool kindergarten bubble, there does not appear to be an overall bubble in enrollment. So this does not seem to be an instance where we might need to think about building another school or building out, but we do have to solve that problem.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But the superintendent confirmed that.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Transportation and Traffic Safety Subcommittee.
Yep. So we had a recent meeting actually earlier in the week, and we touched based on several things. The first, this was a query that came up to me about school signage, in the sense of when you're approaching a school, there should be school signage, school ahead, that kind of a thing for the commuters, and that the Pierce doesn't have anything, and on many of the avenues coming in. So I reached out to Milton Police Department about that. They came back to me and said it's actually a potential DPW issue. So actually, Dr. Pavlicek is taking that on as one of his action items, that he's going to reach out to Bill Ritchie and Joe Lynch and figure out, what our next action steps should be on that. That's something that we're looking to try to put in place, especially because there's so many walkers and bikers, which is a good thing to Pierce now, but especially for drivers, and that's such a busy intersection, that there's no notification that there's a school ahead and coming up all the different avenues there. So that's one step that we're taking. We had a very, very successful Walk to School Day on the 7th. Many of the reps from each of the elementary schools said it was one of their most successful events ever. The numbers were high on all 4 schools. And we are going to have another, all-town Walk to School Day on November 18th before hopefully it gets, knock wood, too cold. But there were other reports that, especially even from the Collicott, Cunningham area, that they tend to try to do it weekly now, at least once a week, and have walking school buses coming through, East Milton Square and going up. So that was a good thing. There are a couple of bus issues that came up that we addressed. One is some of the bus issues of traffic through the East Milton, some of the East Milton Square stops, but Glenn has been reaching out to the Milton Police Department for answers on those. Also, there were a couple of concerns about high school buses potentially maybe leaving a little early for some of the kids, not to be able to make it, and there were some complaints that, 3 minutes after, boom, it's gone, and kids are walking down to Pierce to pick them up. But again, those are all being investigated and addressed and looked at. And then Jake Smith, who's Director of Transportation, is still nailing down dates with the 4 elementaries and Pierce with regards to the safety seminars that they're planning on having. Pierce is mostly going to be like a bike safety seminar about, and then the 4 elementaries are going to be a walking seminar. All the principals have given him dates that just absolutely won't work. Now they're just fine-tuning dates that will potentially will work. So we're going to try to do that before the holidays. And we have another meeting coming up on November 19th. So, stuff moving forward and happening, but,
Great,
yeah.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Ms. Bagley
sorry.
Jones.
Thank you,
Yep,
very
yep.
helpful. Does anything come up on your committee about the plane? I have to talk about it here. About the planes?
No, that's
We've
it.
gotten some emails about it.
Yeah, that's Chairman Zulus is taking that under, so it's a whole other entity in and of itself, because it is transportation in the sky, but it's not something that I'm going to be responsible of how Milton students get from one place to another. So,
It's likely that that will be on the agenda in a coming meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Old business, citizen speak topic response, I don't think we have anything. Next meeting, agenda items. Do you have anything?
I think we'll have health and wellness by then. I'm looking at Janet because we have disseminated, no. We may have health and wellness.
Okay,
I'll get back to
all
you.
right.
Mr.
Mr. Walker.
Mr. Rowe?
No, just as follow-up to that, I wouldn't mind reporting on, just because Ms. Bagley-Jones mentioned the health and wellness, but I would like to do a report. I know with Superintendent Gormley not being there, but just a summary of the health night that we had at the Pierce Middle School. It was sponsored by the Pierce PTO, but open to the entire community. And it was really, really well attended and very successful. With our speaker, Dr. Tara Cousineau, who's a Milton parent, and then also both the health teachers presenting curriculum, which was, it was really good, and maybe I'll chit-chat with you about it, and we'll
We can have,
just a
we
little
can have the
summary.
superintendent. give
Yeah,
you
and give a
at the
summary
next
of it, just
meeting.
as a
Sure.
budding it, because it had to deal with risky behavior and
Sure.
choices and things, so just an
Great.
FYI.
Okay. Mr. Walker.
I think we have the superintendent's evaluation coming up. Is that next meeting or the meeting?
I think what we're going to do, it was intended to be the next meeting, but Ms. Padera is going to be at the conference at the next meeting, so I think we're going to go for the meeting after that, and the process will be, we'll introduce it, especially to the new members, at the next meeting. I will solicit feedback and prepare an evaluation and get that out prior to the 23rd, which will be our next meeting after that, and we'll take it up for a vote on the 23rd. So that's the current plan.
Great. That's perfect. So could I suggest that the superintendent provide us with another update? Could be in whatever form you and she decide, but an update on where we are on the specific goals? Since obviously that should be what we're using to make our judgments.
And Dr. Donahue, did you have something?
Policy will have one or more topics to discuss.
Okay. Policy. Okay. Citizen speak, we don't have anything, I don't believe. So we will now, I will move to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining with MEA, the discussion of which in open session could have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school committee, and also the approval of minutes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Varela?
Yes.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Ms. Padera?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Donahue?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you all. We will see you on November 4th.